All right. Hello, everybody. My name's Zach, and I'm here with Kyle. We are doing the very first Lord of the Rings TCG graded update, and just going to have a little bit of a conversation here about grading Lord of the Rings cards, why you might want to do it, why we do it, and kind of the state of the market. Go over some sales from the last several years, and kind of what's new in grading. And Yeah, so get started here. Kyle and I are actually meeting face to face for the first time, but we've been chatting about graded Lord of the Rings for about the last year or so. So we really wanted to collab and do this video together, just to share our thoughts. Um, just for me, I think to get started, one of the reasons that I like grading Lord of the Rings is the security. I like having a card protected in a case that's clean, and just knowing that that's going to be preserved basically forever. There's other safety features you can use, of course, but I like that. I like that there's data, and from a collector's standpoint, I think it's really fun and exciting to have cards that are truly one of ones when it comes to the number grade. If you have a PSA 10 foil from Lord of the Rings, one, that's incredibly hard to achieve with Decipher and the way they made cards. But there may be 500 of those foils out in the world, but you have the only PSA 10, and that truly makes it more unique and special to me personally. But want to pass along to you, Kyle, and maybe you can talk a little bit about what you like about grading.
Sure. Yeah. So as Zach said, yeah, my name's Kyle. I'm relatively new to Lord of the Rings TCG. I started buying pretty heavily spring of 24, although I do remember opening up some Fellowship booster packs back in 2001 and 2002. And if I recall correctly, I did not pull any foils, but I was like, hey, Lord of the Rings is cool. Saw them at the local, card shop, and I was like, I'll just open these and see what happens. But I do sell a lot of Pokemon on eBay. Not going to give myself a shout out, but I pretty much cut my teeth on Pokemon for the last 7 or 8 years and getting a little bit burned out on that. And Lord of the Rings has always been a franchise and an IP that I really enjoy. So I started digging around, being like, hey, I wonder if there's any cards. And then, of course, you go on eBay, put in Lord of the Rings TCG, and boom, Decipher comes up. So I'm like, all right, let me go on the rabbit hole. And typically, what I've learned from other collectible adventures I've had is you typically want to go for the most expensive cards first, because those are the ones that, if the market does go up, typically tends to see the fastest price increases. And so fortunately or unfortunately, in the case of my wallet, that's kind of led me to mainly collecting masterworks and rare foils. And so I was like, all right. So I started buying those up, and I started looking at the PSA pop report, and I said, hey, it looks like nobody's grading these. I'm like, man, people grade cards and Pokemon and Star Wars and everything else. How come no one's grading Lord of the Rings? And stumbled upon the Facebook group and saw that money collectors are binder collectors or players. It's like, oh, okay. But for me personally, why I like grading is, we all have different biases. You go to the doctor and, you think you're in shape, you think your weight's good, and you have a doctor tell you, man, you're not in shape, you're overweight. That unbiased third party really lays it out pretty clear. And I think we've all experienced, where we buy cards from people or folks or from online, and they say, hey, pack fresh or never played or mint near mint. And we get the card and we inspect it, and the condition doesn't quite meet our expectations. And so I think by grading cards, and of course, no, not every grading company is perfect. It is a human system, but I think by grading cards, you get an unbiased third party examining the card and stating what condition it's in. And therefore it makes it really hard to argue and say like, hey, this is near mint or this is, isn't mint, because a third party has basically already determined that. And then, like Zach said, I do like having the card encased. It just prevents, any potential damage, short of the slab itself getting cracked or getting ran over. And I also like, with graded cards, the ability to have a registry set, which I'm kind of a competitive person when it comes to collecting. And I don't think Beckett or CGC really offer this yet, but PSA has the ability where when you have cards graded, you can upload the serial number from that card. It's called the cert. And then you can basically build your collection online, and then you can directly display or view other people's collections from that same set. to see how your set ranks up condition wise to their set. So yeah, those are just a couple of reasons why I personally enjoy grading.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, Kyle. I think the set registry too is big for me. I think that's a good segue to kind of mention. Both Kyle and I have worked on getting all of the Lord of the Rings TCG sets, specifically the foil sets, added to the set registry. So there's an option for anyone out there who may have graded Lord of the Rings cards in your collection. You can submit a new set request for either foils, non-foils, masterworks, legends, promos, anything you have. You have to have at least 5 cards from the specific set you want to request, and then you can put that in. I think I submitted the first requests last September, so a little more than a year ago, and most of them have been added. I'm still waiting on, I think, the Battle of Helm's Deep foils, which you can see my nice background that matched. I didn't even plan
Yeah,
that. Uh,
nice.
and then we're still, yeah, we're still waiting on some of the later Hunter's Block and Masterwork sets, which Kyle has been working on with his personal collection as well. But there is a lot of sets on there, so if you have cards that you want to display, all of my sets are uploaded in there, and I think I might be the have the most graded Lord of the Rings cards out there. Possibly, I'm not sure. I think I have about 200, so
Oh
it's
yeah,
not massive, but
you've got me beat by quite a bit. So
yeah, with I believe the population report is about let me look at the numbers here, about 1,560 cards total in the entire population on PSA. I'm sure there's more with Beckett and CGC, here and there as well. Um, and yeah, so um, Kyle, maybe we can pull up some of the data and we can discuss kind of some of the sales over the years and some of the top cards that have been sold that have been graded.
sure. Let me share.
For anyone who's
Yeah,
curious, out of those 1,559 graded cards, there's about 139 PSA 10s, so that's about an 11.2% gem rate with with Decipher Lord of the Rings, which is
pretty
not
tough.
awesome, but for anyone who collects from the Star Wars graded community, you guys know this as well, that Decipher is really tough with the black borders to get gem mint 10s, even to get 9s sometimes. And when you add foiling on top of that, it gets even tougher. So
It's,
getting a 10 is definitely a rare feat and pretty exciting.
oh, there we go. Now I'm sharing the right screen. The Excel makes it way easier to sort and filter. So I have a black background. Is that easy enough to view, or do you want it to be should be white? I don't know how easy it is to
We
see
could
in your
try it
screen.
out.
Okay, because
Yeah,
I
we
can
can.
easily switch between. Um, yeah, so basically I've been tracking graded sales, not necessarily to try to boost or pump the value of cards, but I think it's just for me personally interesting to see like, hey, what does a PSA 9 graded rare foil go for versus like what does the raw copy go for? Like do
Yeah,
people actually value graded cards? And I kind of cut to the chase. Like right now, I feel like people don't really grade or don't really value graded cards in Lord of the Rings. Maybe outside of a couple of us here. That may change in the future. Who knows? Maybe we're just burning money. I don't know. But like, anyways, so um, let me sort it down by year. So like going back to 2018. So for the record, I used some private sales data I found in the Facebook group. I used TerraPeak on eBay, which I know for sure it's available to seller accounts. I don't know if anybody can use it, but that goes back 3 years. And then I also use a couple other sites that record old auction data. So that's kind of where I'm pulling these sources from. So like going back to 2018, I could only find 2 graded sales. And honestly, they both seem like steals. I mean, granted, 7 years ago, hindsight's 2020, but it's like someone sold a Reflections Rare PSA 10 Sauron and they got 36 bucks. And I'm not sure the pop one off the top of my head. I think that might still be just either pop one or pop two. And then somebody sold a PSA 10 One Ring from the Return of the King and also got 36 bucks.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, and we'll see some of these same cards. They have transacted since then, not as in high of grades, but even lower grades, they have sold for significantly more than this. So, I don't know. You didn't buy either of these two, did you? Back in 2018?
I didn't. I certainly wish I had, but yeah, I,
Yeah.
I definitely wasn't really looking at. I think the first graded cards I bought was about 4 months after these sales, looking at the dates. I
Okay.
think it was summertime 2018. So, and I think the cards that I bought may have been up for a while as well.
Okay.
Well, no, because they were auctions, so they wouldn't have been up before. But I think each of the cards that I bought were sold beforehand for best offer, and then
Okay.
someone was reselling them at an auction. So
Yeah, but I don't know if these were auction or buy it nows. The source I used for these didn't really state. Based on the sale price, though, I mean, it seems like an odd sale price. Like I feel like buy it nows are typically like, full amount. So I'm guessing that these
yeah,
probably sold at auction. So yeah, you can see like, 7 years ago, next to none next to no public sales data.
yeah,
I
I
don't,
think that
yeah,
yeah,
go
just
ahead.
to comment, I think that one ring. I mean, that's a several $1,000 card today. I think just because of the popularity of the foil itself. But yeah, then you get a few people like us that might be interested in the PSA 10 grade, and that's gonna drive the price up a lot. And then
Yeah.
the Sauron as well. Sauron's incredibly popular. Very few cards throughout the whole TCG of Sauron. You've
Hmm.
got a promo and like one from set 13 from Bloodlines, and you've
Yep.
got the Reflections one, and that's pretty much it. I think that there might only be three
Just
different
those three.
copies you can get.
Yep.
So I think I don't know what you would price that card at, but I think it's over $1,000 probably.
Well, and I wonder too, you know, how much were Return of the King booster boxes back in 2018? How does this correlate to the price of the booster boxes? Because like these days,
Yeah,
Return of the King booster boxes, I mean, they're still kind of fluid and they fluctuate, but like they are by far the most expensive between Fellowship Two Towers and Return of the King. Like I think
yeah.
they're what, 500 or 600 bucks a box now.
Yeah, I think so, and I think again goes to the quantity that's out there, right? That they printed way less Return of the King um, than other sets, and also I think you had a lot of uncut sheets of Return of the King that made their way into the market. I think Wild Things Games over in Oregon got a hold of tons of those sheets and cut them up themselves and sold those foils. So you had I guess, a large flooding of the market of foil copies available that didn't come from a booster box. So
Yeah,
many people probably completed their foil sets from things like that. But you still had a lot less production, I think, on that print run.
right. And yeah, I've heard that same thing where Wild Things Games, they basically bought out Decipher and backed a huge truck up and just got pallets and pallets of sheets and already pre-cut cards. But and then I've also heard people like you mentioned say that yeah, they had a third party cut the sheets. But I've also heard people say no, they didn't actually cut any sheets themselves. All the cards that they're selling on their website were already pre-cut from Decipher. So I don't know
Okay.
which theory holds weight, but
Yeah.
regardless, right? Just because yeah, I agree that Return of the Kings, especially when you look at Mount Doom is kind of a weak set. I mean, that's pretty commonly available, but Siege of Gondor, I mean, that's a pretty expensive set too. So I think the whole block
Yeah.
is, either in high demand or just underprinted overall. And then yeah, reflections. I mean, that's I guess for the reflections boxes are about the same price as Bloodlines these days. I don't know. I haven't seen any recent sales data for reflections. I think Bloodline boxes are. I've seen people asking between like 600 and 800. I don't know if they're actually selling for that much. But I know Reflections only had what, 24 packs in a box, whereas Bloodlines has a full
Yeah.
36.
Right.
So
Yeah, you get 18 cards a pack, but then obviously you're really chasing the two rares or rare pluses, which you only get two per pack. So
yeah,
you may get lucky and pull a couple extra foil cards in a box. but it's totally random from the first 6 sets. So the odds of getting something great like a foil one ring or a green leaf are incredibly, incredibly low.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think the last box of reflections I purchased was like $400, and the guy had a case of six, so I don't think he was trying to maximize the profit
Yeah.
um, that when he cracked that open. But yeah, I think
Well,
it's gone up from there.
and I'm sure anybody that is watching this either now or in the future knows like right now, you can buy full sets of reflections, all the foils period for less than what a box costs. So there isn't really a
Yep.
correlation between the price of a complete set and a sealed box. I mean, even, Return of the King, even if that's $500 a box, think about how many boxes you would have to break to assemble a full foil set. Whereas, I think today I've seen a couple of people listing their full foil Return of the King sets for what, like 4 grand, between four or
Yeah,
5 grand. I guarantee
yeah,
you, it's gonna take you a lot more than just 8 or 10 boxes of Return of the Kings to complete, all the foils raw. So there's definitely, if you crack a box, you're definitely expect to take a hit. You're probably not going to be making money on a box unless you hit one of the really big cards and get it graded and it gets a high grade. But it is fun
yeah.
to
You
rip.
you've
So
got to pull a One Ring or the Witch King from Return of the King. Those are probably the two highest selling cards.
yeah,
And even if you pull a Witch King, you might not make your money back.
no,
But I
yeah,
think that,
it's pretty rough. Or
yeah.
Andorra, the flame, the
Oh
sword. That's
yeah,
a pretty valuable. But again, that's not coming anywhere near the price of a box. I don't even know if there's any
yeah,
graded sales of that. Yeah, so I guess we'll move on to so there really was nothing that I could find from 2019 to 2020, which was interesting because 2020, the pandemic, everyone's getting free attendees from the government, spending money on cards, and at least from what I can see, it doesn't look like any graded cards transacted in 2020. So a lot of the Lord of the Rings cards must have been raw sales because I know from reading in the group and talking to folks, there was a little bit of an explosion in price during that 2020, 2021 card game boom. That's how, Pokemon Go to the Moon saw, Magic increase, sports cards shop like crazy too. But again, probably a very limited number of graded cards at that point. So not much in the way of sales. But in 2021, we are hitting 18 sales. And what's interesting is, you know, the majority is non-foils, which to me, I know grading back in 2021 for the record, because I've been grading for a long time. I think you could get graded cards depending on the special that PSA was running anywhere between 750 and $10 a card. So at that price point, it's like, all right, sure, you can grade non-foils if you think they'd have a 10 shot. But yeah, it looks like a lot of the cards sold were PSA 10, but they were non-foils. So I don't know who's buying the non-foils back then, but they were commanding a pretty decent price. I mean, I think PSA 10 non-foil Mary, $50 and 20. I thought that's pretty solid.
yeah,
There was a foil Aragorn from Realms that sold for 262. And you picked up this copy, right?
yeah. So yeah,
That's your copy?
I bought that copy. So that's maybe it was way later than I thought. I thought I got those back in yeah, like
Unless there's
2018, but
another
I
one. This
guess
could be a different sale too, that
no, that's a pop one card, and that's
is it?
I know the price I paid for it. So yeah, so that Aragorn and then the Watcher in the Water, which obviously I got for a steal even back then at $39.
Yeah.
And then the Sam Frodo's Gardener from the Two Towers. Those are my first three cards that I picked up that were graded. So that kind of got me into collecting graded cards.
Okay. Yeah, and not, again, so far we basically are just seeing movie block sales. We're not really seeing anything from the promo world or anything from the later sets. But yeah, I think that even in 2021, I think these are pretty solid prices for non-foils because, as we're at the end of 2025 going to 2026, it would be hard for me to see somebody paying, more than 40 or $50 for even a PSA 10 AON non-foil. I mean, because that
Yeah.
card raw isn't even that much. And I'm sure there's quite a few raw copies out there that would be PSA 10 quality if people opted to grade them today. But again, with PSA charging 17 to $20, depending on how you go, it's just not feasible for somebody to even grade non-foils really at this point, outside of some really rare promo cards.
Yeah,
But yeah,
if you grade a 5 cent card, I don't know, yeah, how you really assess the value. Like, is it automatically worth $20 because you throw the grading cost on there, or
To you it
for
might be,
what,
but to
but
many others are like, no.
yeah,
Yeah. It's not really a money-making scheme. But I do think it's interesting here. We have a PSA 9 Witch King. Even in 2021, that was selling for over $100. Now, the Witch King is kind of, I don't want to say it has a cult following, pun intended, but it's like, it's kind of a main character that hardly has any lines. It's not part of the Fellowship. It's not, an elf. It's not a dwarf. It's like, it's its own character. That's the antagonist. Yeah, even for a PSA 9, someone was paying over $100, which, I think today I'd throw down $100 easily for a PSA 9 if one hit the market. I think that's a
yeah,
pretty good price. So I must have
yeah, I
misnumbered
agree. And
the dark tunnels. That
I
probably
think,
should be a 1, not a 4, but yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, the Witch King, I think definitely, is going to run a premium with just people that are attracted to that character. Um, as just a fan favorite, of one of the bad guys. Not as popular, but similar to like the Balrog, right? You're always
Yep.
going to have a following for the Balrog, for maybe Shelob, maybe less so, but things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the Wraiths and or the Nazgul in general, they're people that, hey, got to catch them all, right? There's even a lot of toys, and stuff that are like, hey, from the What a Workshop where it's like, hey, this is, Nazgul or, Wraith specific. So yeah, they definitely have their own following and their own uh, collector base.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So, again, very few sales. You're averaging like what, 1.5 a month, probably just pretty casual. 2022, you know, really not much going on. That we're not really seeing any growth or any consistent numbers yet. I think the interesting thing for me is I am also recording not just graded cards, but if the card is signed and then authenticated by Beckett or PSA, I guess CDC. But there was a signed Christopher Lee card that was a Beckett authentic that sold for $250. Um, and he had already passed away by this point. But his auto on Lord of the Rings Decipher cards is pretty rare. He did
yeah,
sign, I think he did a mass signing in the UK when the Fellowship first came out, because there are a number of these Saruman's ambition cards signed by him. Um,
that's a great
Saruman,
picture too. Great card to get
yeah,
signed.
and surprisingly, Saruman did not have his own character card in set one. Lurtz
Right.
did, a lot of the other, but he didn't. And so the timing of both when the Fellowship set came out and the Mines of Moria set came out, he signed in between there. And so when he did the signing, that was really the best Saruman card available. And I've heard that there was like a stack of them. I don't have any numbers. I do own a copy myself, signed in silver pen. It's currently out at PSA getting authenticated. But yeah, that was a pretty expensive sale. And then outside of that, everything that sold in 2022 was non-foils. We're not really seeing any big cards rise yet. But again, just a lot of movie block stuff,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
no foils. Yeah, I mean some pretty good sales prices still though,
yeah,
considering the non-foil, like a common Frodo,
yeah.
$80.
Hmm.
Again, as like as a potential buyer looking at this, my kind of opinion with non-foils is, I've got probably 10 copies of this sitting in a box. And if I really wanted to have a graded copy, I'd roll the dice and grade one myself and pay the
Yep.
17 bucks rather than drop 80, on a PSA 10. I might spend maybe $30 on a PSA 10. But if I have a decent chance of getting a 10
Right.
myself by grading it, I'm not going to spend that much of a premium, on a non-foil.
I agree. And it's like, just kind of back to Pokemon a little bit. For the longest time, Pokemon only foils were selling, and then COVID hit, and then a lot of non-foils, like a lot of the base cards, like your Charmanders, your Pikachu's, whatever, all of a sudden started selling for a couple $100. And mind you, at this time, I think PSA was still backlogged and closed from COVID because they closed for COVID in early 2020. I think then they reopened for submissions the summer of 2020, and right away they kind of did themselves in because they ran a special, which I submitted a ton at 750 a card, and that just completely
Gosh.
overwhelmed them. And so then they were digging out from their backlog for I think close to a year or two. So for a while, here, you couldn't even submit to PSA. And then when PSA did open again, it was a lottery system where you basically had to wait, and then you got, I think, a voucher for like up to 10 cards you could get graded. And when they came back online, I think 10 cards, the cheapest price was $30 because I remember waiting to get some high-end Pokemon graded. So I guess my point being is, if these prices ever were sustainable, and if another one sold consistently, there are so many people like yourself who have probably tons of mint raw copies who could just flood the market right away with tens. The price would just drop. It'd probably be
Yeah.
the cost of grading plus a buck or two. Like these prices, definitely one-offs, don't seem sustainable if a decent supply hit the market.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. If you have somebody that really likes that particular character,
Yeah.
it looks like only two of these ended on the same day, you know.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know what the buyer's mentality is with the purchase or not, but
Some
maybe
people just
they needed a
have,
birthday gift or something. I don't
yeah.
know.
And there is the thing too, about getting the bird in the hand. It's like, hey, I might have mint copies. PSA is closed. I don't want to pay $30 to grade it. Here's somebody
Yeah,
on eBay with, done deal. I know it's a 10. There's none of this PSA guessing game, because you can think you've got a really good copy and you do, but maybe someone at PSA thinks differently. It comes back as a 9. That's just
sure.
thought, hey, I'll just pay up and get the guaranteed grade. So I don't know. Teach their own. Markets are irrational sometimes. Okay, I think 2023 is where we start to really see some sales data. Yeah, here we got 52 sales.
There we go.
Now, what year did the Ring of Power, the first season, come out? Was that in 2023? Or was that 2024, the first season of that? Do you know? I'm just wondering if there's like
I
a
think
correlation here at all between.
I think it was the end of 22.
Oh, okay. So then I wonder if
So
some
that
of that carried over.
yeah. Yeah, because I know they started filming before COVID hit and got shut down. So it was delayed several years. But I want to say the first season started coming out the end of 2022.
Okay. Yeah, because for some reason now between 2022 and 2023, like we've just exploded. I mean, we're seeing sales from the movie block. We're seeing sales from some of the later sets. We're seeing more autographed cards hit the market. And again, these autograph cards, I'm not saying that's a play to make, but here we've got a Gimli non-foil, which it's got to be $5 or less, I would think. I know that John Davies, only charges like $80 to $100 to get a card signed. So definitely seems like there was, some profit being made here, because I know to get a
Yeah.
card dual authenticated by PSA back at this time was like $25. So there's definitely some profit here. People aren't just, breaking even. Got to sign Sean Astin, signed Miranda Otto. Again, Otto non-foil, selling for $200. One of the big sales I think I want to highlight though is that a PSA 10 foil ring from Return of the King sold for 1,200, and up until 2022, that was our most expensive publicly recorded sale for a single card. It seems to me, or up until 2023, seems like that's a pretty solid price for that card. Again, because we saw that same card in the PSA 9 sell back in 2018 for, it was a PSA 10,
It was a
36
10. It was
bucks.
I know
Yeah, it was a
it's the
10.
same
So
card. Yeah, I'm
30
sure it's
was
the
same
same
serial
card.
probably. $36 to $1,200 over the course of 5 years. Pretty solid.
It's a pretty good ROI.
Yeah, yeah. Too bad
Yeah, I think
can't be
somebody was happy
replicated.
with
If I
their
could
investment.
replicate that over and over again, that'd be fun. But no, I mean we're
Yeah,
seeing, even if I sort down just by foils, we're seeing quite a few foils. Not a whole lot of character foils. It looks like a lot of, we did see a Balrog sell, but a lot of cards that are just kind of random. Gollum there, News from the Mark, and some of these are selling for pretty reasonable. I mean, it's like 850 for a PSA 9. The likelihood of you getting a PSA 9 quality card, buying it raw from somebody off of eBay, slim to none. Plus the cost of
yeah,
grading. I mean, whoever sold that definitely lost money. Same with this one, 331. Like definitely auction prices, but good for the winner, I guess. Um,
yeah.
yeah, we did see a Balrog Masterwork in a PSA 9 sell for 113. I don't know what that card raw was selling for back then. I think these days raw it's like what 80 to 100 maybe. I know it's definitely the chase card from the Bloodlines
Yeah, it's
Masterworks
yeah, you pretty much want that card if you're opening a box of Black
or
Rider for
Black Rider. I
sure.
mean, not
Yeah.
Bloodlines. But yeah, yep.
Yeah, I remember seeing somebody in the Facebook group rip one of those and grade it and get a 10 too, which is pretty fun.
Wow.
I graded one of those myself and I think it got an 8 or a 9. Um that I pulled pack fresh as well. But
Okay.
yeah, but I think yeah, again, a decent price. I think you're spot on with the raw value there.
I think it's interesting too. This Aragorn. These are the DVD promo packs. I think you can. It's the 3-pack of Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn. I think you can pick these packs up all day for like $5 or less on eBay. I mean, they're just mass produced, and I've got quite a few packs myself because I am going for a complete graded promo set, at least all the promos that PSA will recognize. I think I've still got like 10 or 15 that they refuse to recognize because the release of them was a little bit ambiguous, specifically like the
Yeah.
D agent cards. But anyways, it's like, man, PSA 10. I've opened probably 10 of these, DVD 3-packs. I've got probably 3 or 4 Aragorns that are PSA 10 quality. And so, yeah, to get $60 for that, you figure a couple bucks for the card plus 17, 8, whatever bucks for grading. Definitely a pretty solid return.
And I think
Um,
the population report on that is somewhat higher than most cards too. I mean, I think there's already 7 or 8 PSA 10s out there. So
yeah,
I think from what I've seen on the pop report, it's a lot harder to get the Legolas and Gimli for whatever reason.
I think there's one that
Um,
still doesn't have a PSA 10. I can't remember if it's Gimli or Legolas, but one of them doesn't have any 10s, last I checked.
yeah, and is Gimli on the front of the pack? I don't remember. I don't know if that matters or
Um,
not, but
I can't remember. I know that there
I
is
think
also that
Aragorn is
error
on the
variant.
front.
Because isn't it Aragorn that has the foil misprint? It's really rare where like you see the Gimli's head, kind of like,
Yeah,
and I can't think. There's not an official name for it yet. I mean, PSA doesn't recognize it yet, although they might if I tried. But that's a really rare, foil too, that
yeah.
I've seen on eBay a couple times in a sealed pack, but I haven't made an offer yet or acquired one.
Yeah, that's interesting. Um, I'm not that may be me who picked up that card too, because I did buy a PSA 10 Aragorn DVD promo. Um, so I may have dropped that $60 on that card as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking. Okay, so the Aragorn is currently pop 4 in a 10.
Okay,
Legolas is pop 2 in a 10, and Gimli is pop 0 in a 10. But Gimli
okay,
does have 11 PSA 9s. So,
gotcha. Yeah, and
yeah.
I graded a 3-pack, and I think I got a 2 9s and an 8, or a 9 and 2 8s or something. Um, and it was right after that I went and picked up the PSA 10 Aragorn because I just saw it available. So
Yeah, sometimes it's
um,
easier to get the bird in the hand. And I know from the packs I
yeah,
opened, typically the centering on those is okay, but I noticed upon inspecting, some very, very fine horizontal print lines, which obviously PSA is going to dock and give you a 9 at best. So, um,
I agree that that's a pretty easy chase though, because again, you can pick up the 3-packs for super cheap. You can rip a ton of them, and
yep,
try to find a couple of the best ones to send in for grading.
for sure. Yeah, a lot of what's interesting is a lot of the hunters cards that sold rare foils. I feel like were relatively low grades. Um, we got a bunch of 7s, which typically I think Lord of the Rings and even other TCGs, if you grade less than an 8, you're pretty much better off having sold that card for raw prices, because a lot of people are not paying a premium for a card outside of maybe like a 9 or 10 grade. Some cards are really hard to grade.
Yeah,
Like Rise of Saruman Masterworks, the majority of those are 8s or less for a handful of reasons, which we can talk about that maybe on a later call. But yeah, getting actually selling PSA 7s. I wonder if people just crack these out and put them in their binders because I can't imagine anybody's building a PSA 7 or PSA 8, set of the hunters. But I feel like this is a really good price, man. 29 bucks for a PSA 10 Deagle from Bloodlines. That may be a pop one. I think that card raw today sells
that's
for
a
about 30 bucks.
that's a pop
So
too. So I
is it pop
also
two?
bought that card.
I'm just gonna start putting a little check mark by all the ones that you
I know. I'm just gonna snipe in here and be like, "Yep, I bought that one. I bought that one."
yeah.
I saw that. I think that was an auction as well. Um, but yeah, I saw that, and I think I kind of had a little bit of a feel of how hard it was to get the rare foils and masterworks from the later sets in a 10. I don't think I had graded any myself at that point, but just seeing the pop report and stuff, and I saw that and I was like, I got to pick that up. I got to go for it. So, but
Yeah.
I definitely I think my max bid was much higher than that, and I got a really good steal on it. So I was happy about that.
I mean, honestly, like I have a set in at PSA right now. I was trying to look before this call. I think right now in at PSA, I've got roughly 150, 160 Lord of the Rings cards waiting to come back, but I wouldn't expect them to come back before, probably April or May. I mean, they're still backed up, but I wanted to get in while the price was still 17 bucks a card because traditionally I submit directly, but they haven't really been throwing any bones to the PSA membership,
Yeah,
Um, so if I go through PC Sports Cards, they're out of New York, not sponsored. They only charge 17 bucks, for bulk. And I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna get these in because I don't know if PSA is gonna, jack their price up to 19 or 20 bucks because I think everybody else right now is like 20 or 21 through GameStop. But anyways, I'm like, so I submitted a bunch of Bloodlines, Hunters, Resis Armand, Treachery and Deceit, and some higher end promos. So I do have a really clean Bloodline set. I'm hoping comes back all nines and tens. But yeah, like today, if I needed this card for a set, I mean, I would gladly pay 100 bucks, to get that one card in PSA 10 just because it's like, you know, you can mess around, you can do a bunch of submissions and you might get five nines back, But yeah, like I said earlier, getting a PSA 10 and these foils, that's pretty tough, you know.
yeah. I think my reflection submission for anyone who's seen that video was a great example of the difficulty, right? Like I opened 50 packs of reflections. I sent a full set of 52 cards off to get graded. About 45 of those cards I pulled myself in that video, and I had to pick up a few just to complete the set so I could send the full set off. So I picked up a few other ones off eBay and stuff. Got one gem mint 10 out of 52 cards.
It's
Um,
rough. It is
and,
rough.
and I was picking through too because you get a lot of duplicates when you open that many packs, especially of the non rare pluses, the regular rares, and still trying to pick the best ones. And yeah, that was a tough pill to swallow when I got that submission back.
And the sad thing is it's like there's so many cards that I've held in hand that look really good on the front. I mean, like good centering or good enough centering, clean foils, but then I flip them over and it's either got like a micro indent from the factory, it's got some crazy like lines, or maybe the rollers for the sheets, made a mark. It's like the fronts of the cards. If you get good centering, typically they look pretty good. Now I know you've had some exceptions with the boxes you've opened lately where they got some pretty funky print marks or whatever, but
Yeah,
yeah, I feel like typically when I get a card, I almost always look at the back first. And if the back looks good, then I flip it over and look at the front because the back I feel like is more likely to just have like, I mean, I've seen some crazy stuff. Like there's little white specks that are almost embedded, and it's not physical surface damage, but it's almost like when they printed, there wasn't that dark, the black or the brown or whatever, and so it's almost like they just like white dots, and then when they put the laminate or the sheen over it, it seals it up. So again, it doesn't feel rough, but visually it detracts from the eye appeal, and PSA is probably going to flag you, mark you down for an 8 or 9 because in their
yeah,
eyes, compared to any other TCG, this looks like white surface damage. So they're
yeah.
really tough to grade.
Again, for anyone out there who's thinking about grading cards, with Decipher, with Lord of the Rings, with Star Trek, with Star Wars, there's a lot of black, and that makes it really tough because if you
Yep.
nick a corner, it shows up white, and it's not like Pokemon, which has yellow borders, at least on the older stuff, and you can get maybe a little bit of forgiveness with if you have some whitening because you can't see it as well. Of course, PSA is going to magnify it a ton, and they'll find it,
Yep.
but it's going to be much more obvious on these Decipher cards. And again,
Yep.
I think that's part of what makes it attractive to me. I love this game and I love these cards and I love Lord of the Rings, and it sort of makes the chase more fun because it's so hard again to get these gem mint quality cards. Me personally, I'm not reselling stuff really unless I have a duplicate. I'm just trying to build my personal collection. I'm not in this for the money. I'm wasting tons of money doing this. This is for fun. Um, but yeah, that again, that chase is exciting because of how difficult it is to get these cards graded well.
It is definitely not a cakewalk. And the truth of the matter is, the sealed product, once you get later on, it's getting pretty expensive. And it's like you only get what, 6 foils or 7 foils if you're really lucky in a box. And
Yeah,
again, for these movie blocks, you know, there's so many common foils, so many uncommon foils, which I mean they're worth something, but like they're not really worth even the price of the pack, like $5 to $10 on eBay. And it's like, so really you're hunting for rare foils. And those you get what, like one a box, two a box if you're
yep,
lucky. And it's like, and that's part of the reason why I don't really collect the movie block personally, is it's just when I set out, I needed a goal that I thought could be achievable for myself personally. And so I was like, all right, there's only a finite number of rare foils and masterworks. But you go into the
yeah,
movie block where there's a foil copy of every single card. I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I could slug through that. So props to you for trying that, because I don't I don't think I could. I started out really ambitious when I first started. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get every card at PSA 10. And then I quickly realized, nope. Some cards, the best that there may be is like a PSA 8 or 9, just from centering alone. I mean, some of the promos I've looked through and bought tons of promos. Some of the promos, every single copy is off centered. I swear. And so it's
yeah,
like, even if the card itself is perfectly mint, I might get a PSA 8 at best just because of the centering alone. So,
sure.
anyways, yeah, that's that's for another time. But yeah, and then we got a Balrog PSA 9 Mines of Moria. I think that's a pretty good price. I know recently, we'll see when we get to 2025. I think a PSA 8 sold for about the same price. I don't think there's any PSA 10s of the rare Balrog. I think there's only 9s. I'm not sure how many 9s, but I feel like, again, like I said earlier, there are definitely Balrog collectors. So that's a pretty solid sale for whoever bought that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a pretty cool card. Very iconic. Obviously, the first time you're getting a Balrog card in a set, the first time it's available rare. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I prefer that art personally a lot more than the masterwork one. I just think it's more iconic, but yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I don't think you beat the Mines of Moria rare Balrog. I think it's the
Yeah.
best picture.
All right, then we're going
All
back to
right.
2024, 66. So for anybody keeping track at home, just for the record, in 2023, we saw 42 graded sales, which I mean, again, these are minuscule numbers compared to the Star Wars, Decipher, CCG, Pokemon, but we are starting to see a little bit of growth. So we're going to go from 42 up to, hold on, 66. And I did make some notes earlier, just for, I kind of summarized and looked to see, how are these numbers doing, as far as like the total number of sales, the average price of the card per sale. And so in 2023, across these sales, the average price was $65 a card. So we're definitely starting to see, a little bit higher value, or maybe just some bigger sales helping bring up the average. I guess we'll look, because there definitely are some bigger sales. But yeah, I mean, we're starting to see, graded cards. Maybe they're starting to get a little bit of a premium, over the raw price plus the grading fee. Maybe people are paying a little bit extra to get that, 8, 9, 10 grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, were there any numbers? I mean, there's multiple multi-$100 sales. Was there anything in particular that stood out to you?
Yeah, I think the Witch King PSA 10 or sorry, CGC 10
SC.
is an interesting one. Just because
First
you
year we
don't
saw any
have a
CGC sales, by the way, too. I don't know if we
yeah,
just started grading this year, but previously it was always just PSA or Beckett.
yeah, and I think there's a couple guys over in Europe that maybe do a little bit more with CGC who are or Lord of the Rings fans and also with Beckett. I don't know if it's a little easier over there to grade with those services, or maybe they just like them better. Of course, PSA is still king with everything grading, but especially Lord of the Rings TCG, based on the data we have. But yeah, you've got a CGC 9 of power according to his stature, kind of an interesting card. But a
Mm-hmm.
nice, nice picture of Frodo on that card.
Yep.
Again, $111, that's probably a pretty decent price raw for that card. That could be a $70-$80 card raw.
And right
Um,
above it, too, Gladriel, her
yeah,
rare, as I call it, rare, or R for rookie, PSA 8, 110. I think that card raw is like 40 to 50, maybe $60. And it's
yeah,
not the hardest card to grade. Granted, it's the one with her in her handout. There is a lot of foiling. I've got multiple copies waiting to be signed by Kate if she ever signs again. And it took me a while to find one that didn't have a bunch of scratching on the foil. But overall, I'm like, yeah, that's like almost a 3x multiplier from what that card is raw. That's for just an
Yeah.
8, not even a 9. You know,
Yeah, and
I
then
think
you
the
again you've got the gaffer right above there,
yep,
another CGC 10. Um, so again, not a super expensive rare foil, maybe a $30 card, but yeah, again, like you said, you just 3x'd your investment there probably with that one.
for sure.
Um,
And, not to spit anybody towards one grading company or the other, but I have graded with CGC quite a bit other card games. And I did recently grade with them for the 0D 1 through 4 promos, which PSA at the time did not recognize, but now they do recognize. So if that person is watching who got PSA to recognize those, I appreciate you. I'm going to crack out my CGC cards and send them a PSA in my next submission. But my point is, unless it's a CGC 10 pristine, the regular CGC 10, typically the card quality that I've seen is about the same as a PSA 9. So again, that's not a blanket statement. That's just what I personally observe. So when I see these CGC 10 sales, I'm kind of equating them in my mind to like what a PSA that would be like a PSA 9 sale. So again, that's just my opinion. But yeah, you said the Witch King $600. If
so
that's a
another
PSA 9, you know,
we might see this on the 2025 sales. But I recently purchased the that same Witch King card in a PSA 10 um for less than that price.
mm,
But that price was discussed in the sale conversation as kind of a
okay,
benchmark because it's really the only recorded sale we have, obviously with a
sure.
different grading company. But yeah, that was interesting.
I thought that this Aragorn in a CGC 9, and then like you paid less than that for a PSA 10.
Yeah,
Granted,
yeah,
cards have gone up since then, but yeah, I
yeah,
thought that
three
was a surprisingly
two
strong sale
two
for a
years earlier,
CGC
three
9.
years earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that's real strong for a CGC 9. This
And I
Aomer,
think too that set, right, Realms of the Elf Lords, I think you have a bit of a premium with that set again because you have, the price per box is more expensive, so therefore your pack odds are going down as far as trying to get
yes,
the cards you want.
yep.
Um and yeah, you've got some really really cool iconic cards like the Sauron, your first appearance of Sauron. You've got another Galadriel card in that set, and things like that, the Arwen.
I forgot that I had my filter on to only show foils. So my bad. Now we're showing all the sales data, foils included. So yeah, I mean, there's a one our rain non-foil that sold for $30. I know the rings are highly collectible. Like a lot of people like the rings. I don't know if there's as much demand for the non-foil versions versus the foil. But I feel like that's pretty solid because pulling that card alone, it's going to probably take you on average what 4 boxes. I don't know how many rares. Let's see. There's 360, so there's 120 rares in the base set. So yeah, it might take you like 4 boxes or so just to pull the one rain rare. So yeah, I think
Yeah,
$30 for a 9 that's pretty reasonable.
yeah.
Um, yeah, here's the CGC 9 non-foil Balrog selling for $40. Seems pretty good. Yeah, I agree. Realms of the Elf Lords. I've been looking for some of those cards. I have an Elrond foil now to get signed if Hugo Weaving ever signs again, or if I can get his autograph. I like to get that card signed. Plus, I do have his fellowship card, but I think that the Realms of the Elf Lord art is a little bit, or picture is a little bit better. But yeah, that's a pretty expensive set for being in the first movie block. Um,
I think we saw a lot more reflections cards here in 2024 as well pop up.
yeah, yeah, and that's something to note is in 2024, um, a lot of the cards we did see a lot of movie block. Like the majority are movie blocks. We get down here to the end. There's only a handful of shadows and promos. So it seems like because I consider reflections to be movie blocks still, even though it's not specifically from a certain movie. Um,
Yeah.
it seems like sales and probably grading still primarily at this point is movie blocks. That's what people are chasing. That's what people want encased in plastic.
I
Um,
don't I'm curious what your thoughts are as far as like who is grading these cards, whether they graded them 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Because when I just look at what cards have been graded, right? A lot of main characters. I feel like that's pretty obvious, right? You pull a cool main character, you know, it could be the only booster box you opened in your whole life, but if you pull a foil main character, you might just say, "Hey, I'm going to get this graded. It's cool, maybe it'll be worth some money, whatever." The other thing, because we've got a lot of random foils seemingly that have been graded too from these
Yeah.
sets. My other thought is there's people out there that cracked a booster box. Maybe they had six foils from that booster box sitting around in a binder for 20 years, and then they decided to just pull them out and get graded because they saw, okay, these things are starting to sell. Maybe I can sell these. And so because you do seem to have a lot of random events or conditions that are, PSA sevens.
With random
I've bought a
grades,
couple
you
of them,
know.
so yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
some of the grading seems very random. Some seems a little bit more purposeful, maybe with more of the main characters.
My theory, again, this is unproven. This is just is, I think Pokemon leads the way for a lot of like the TCGs. And my guess, my theory is that a lot of people probably did Pokemon submissions. And then they had these cards from when they cracked a box, 20 years ago. Maybe they were in a binder. And so then they just piggyback on the back of other submissions, whether it was like a One Piece or a Pokemon. They're like, oh, I've already sent in 30 cards. Let me send in these 5 foils and just see what they grade. And,
Yeah.
didn't really pre-grade them, pre-screen them, nothing. And then they came back, like Thundering Host, PSA 7. Okay. You're a liar. And like, because it would be hard for me to envision somebody making a Lord of the Rings specific submission and then submitting these random cards. I almost feel like they're
Right.
just bulk that they threw in with another card game submission.
Yeah.
But
No, I hadn't thought of that before, but that does make a lot of sense. Yeah, with the TCG bulk being one of the lower price points for PSA and stuff too.
yeah, we did see a signed Gandalf card, 500 Smackaroos, non-foil to common from Return of the King. So up until recently, I don't think Ian McKellen had done a public signing. I know he did a public signing in August of this year that you could send in. But I think up until this point, getting an authenticated Ian McKellen auto on card was pretty tough. So it doesn't surprise me that that sold for $500. Pretty solid
Yeah, I
sale.
think out of a lot of the main characters, I think his autograph's gonna give you that premium for sure.
Yeah, I think I would have gotten a different card signed. I don't think I would have gotten a common non-foil personally, but
Yeah,
maybe that's all they had. Yeah, there's a lot of auctions. I think most of the reflection sales I saw because at this point I was looking and buying some. Um, some of these PSA sevens went for like next to nothing. I'm like, all right, that's cool. Like if I were building a binder set, which I'm not really doing any binder sets. I do have a binder set of Duresus Harmon and Treachery and Deceit that's almost completed. All gem mint cards. Basically, I'm not grading any non-foils, but if I were to grade non-foils, I'm only putting cards in the binder that I would grade. So it's a very clean set. But it's like, yeah, if I was doing a reflection set, heck yeah, I would have bought, the Gimli for $1, cracked it out of the PSA 7 case, put it right in my binder, and because that's
yeah,
cheaper than buying it raw. Yeah, the Sauron. Okay, so earlier we saw the PSA 10 sell. Here we see a
yep,
P or a CGC 9 selling for 250. So starting to a little bit premium. Here we saw a PSA 9 sell for basically 480. And we're going
yeah,
August. We're going like 2 weeks. So I mean, here you can see the price difference, the price premium that PSA is bringing over CGC, when it comes to these
yeah.
cards. I mean, that's almost a 2x, which is
Yeah, and
pretty
yeah,
astonishing.
going back to that 2018 sale, I think if that Sauron PSA 10 resurfaced, now you have a benchmark of a PSA 9 at $477. So I think you've got to at least double that, if not more, for a PSA 10.
Yeah.
It's I think it's a pop one card as well.
Yeah. And it's always hard to tell too. I mean, we've got such few sales that I'm not really sure how deep the buyer pool is. Like I agree, a PSA 10, especially with this game and how hard it is to grade, should probably double or command a double 2x premium over PSA 9. but is the buyer pool deep enough, or do they have deep enough wallet to, justify paying $1,000 for a PSA 10? I don't know. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. A PSA 8 Gilgalad selling for 180. I think that's about a $50 to $60 card raw. I got a couple signed earlier this year when the actor was doing a signing through, I think it was Pioneer, but that's a pretty high price point, I feel like, for Gilgalad.
Yeah, that one surprises me at a PSA 8 a little bit, you know.
Yeah,
I
I think
mean,
they'd be like PSA
again,
9 pricing personally.
yeah. All right, maybe we
Uh,
can jump on to 2025.
sure.
We're getting pretty close to the hour mark, so we'll probably try to wrap this up
Okay.
pretty
Oh
quick
yeah,
here.
sure. Yeah, so 2025 we saw even more sales, 97 sales. I think the highest one was the One Ring PSA 9 foil, sold for a little over $1,500. That was a pretty big sale. We saw
Yeah.
Goblin Armory PSA 8 sell for 1,100.
And
There's
that's the first
rumors
time
that,
we've seen that card too.
yep, that was the highest graded copy at the time. There is a PSA 9 copy now that I've heard is sold, but I haven't been able to get confirmation that it sold or what the price was for sure. So I haven't added it, but there is at least a PSA 9 out there. Um,
Goblin Armory is really interesting to me. I get the value from, the utility of the card, right? It's a very good game play card. But from a grading standpoint, it's just interesting because obviously if you put it in a slab, you're kind of saying I'm not playing with this anymore. So you've
right,
sort of lost that playability. I don't know if it's just the rarity in the fact that so many people are hoarding their copies for gameplay and having foil decks similar to Greenleaf or Double Shot or things like that, where there's just not a lot of foil copies out there for sale, period. And so that drives the graded price up. But it's just kind of interesting because it's not exactly like an iconic card or
yeah,
character. It's sort of a random, really good, condition.
yeah. I mean, there's tons of Goblin cards, foil Goblin cards too. It's like why out, like I said, outside that one being playable, if someone's building a graded set or like, yeah, it's hard for me to fathom the premium, but maybe there is something where it's just like, hey, since this is a valuable card raw, I'm just going to pay a lot in a, in a nice grade, average grade, I guess. We did
Yeah.
see a Legolas sell PSA 9 from Fellowship for 650. I think that's a little bit high, but again, the pop isn't super high on that card, and a lot of the
I
cards
think
I've
it's a
seen on eBay would not be PSA 9 quality. So
yeah, I think I bought one raw mint condition for 200, 250 or something like that and graded it and got a 9. Um so I'm glad I did that versus paying the 650 for it. But
yeah,
um yeah, but yeah, I think that's a pop 4 in a PSA 9.
yeah, it's pretty low. I've got one of them. We got the jumping down here real quick. We've got the Rain from Return of the King foil in a PSA 9, selling for almost 1,100. Seems pretty solid. I don't know if we would see
And
that replicated. Maybe that was a buyer who was like, "Hey, I just gotta get this. This is going to be the only one that pops up."
yeah,
Um, do you know? We can edit this part out. So when we get to 1 hour, does it cut off?
no.
We can edit that out. I mean, I don't know. I've never used StreamYard. Um, I didn't know. Yeah, and then we are also seeing more later sets. So we've got some Black Rider cards. We've got some Rise of Saruman cards. So we've got some Masterworks finally selling. I may or may not have bought a couple of these as I work towards my set. Um, yeah, so we're seeing a lot more sales. We're seeing a rain from Shadows. Now the Shadows cards are pretty affordable. Although this is the Tengor print, so I don't know if those are more valuable. I think I personally would rather have the non-Tengor one, but
Yeah, I
you
know
know.
that to get these cards out of a sealed box, those sealed War of the Ring boxes are the most expensive of those anthology
Okay,
boxes.
sure.
But I think you still have a lot of available sealed packs around that are much cheaper than buying an entire sealed box.
Oh yeah,
So
yep,
I I feel like there's a lot out in the market available for someone to potentially get graded.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, props to whoever sold that because I think they made some good profit off of that.
Well, and then the One Ring from Reflections PSA 9 also sold for 220. I think
Yeah,
I think that same card in a previous year only sold for like 50 or 60. And I know I would definitely be a buyer at 50 or 60. I do have some
sure.
Reflections cards. I'm probably working towards a 9 set. I don't think I'll get them in all 10s. I'm not that committed to Reflections, but a 9 set would be nice.
Yeah, again,
Um,
yeah, I think the One Ring is always going to have its own premium no matter what. But I think availability wise and raw price, there's so many of these out there.
yep.
Um, it's definitely not going to command the premium of a movie block ring or the Hunters
Mhm.
um, One Ring or something like that.
Yeah. And we are seeing a lot more signed cards last year too. I know a lot of these actors have started doing more conventions, more signings. You know, specifically the Four Hobbits, they're almost always signing. John Davies, he's almost always signing. So some of these autos are definitely more popular than others, or more common, more available. But yeah, definitely seen a lot of signed cards as well.
Do we have
So
anything from Bernard Hill? Just because I know he passed away fairly
I've
recently.
been looking. I know that there's a couple people in the Facebook group that have his card signed. I have not seen any public sales or seen any copies available. I think people are holding those pretty close to their chest just due to the fact that that actor, did pass away.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, then I think I can't remember if I mentioned it. We got a 1 hour foil over 1,500 bucks. So I don't know what a 10 would go for. I don't know what the pop is. If there is a 10, I think some of the PSA pop stuff is a little bit messed
I think
up.
there is one uh PSA 10 out there, but I've never
Okay.
seen it posted or for sale.
Yeah. I I would guess probably at least 2,500 to 3 grand if I went out on a limb. I think somebody, especially if it's pop one, I could see somebody paying that.
Yeah, I think
But
any of the three movie block foil rings, I think you're looking at several thousand. Um, I
yep. Yeah, because there's some people that
like
only want graded rings. They don't care about anything else, and so
yeah,
they're willing to, pay whatever you can get. But yeah, we see a lot of decent sales. I mean, seems like higher grades, nines and tens of main characters are always breaching, 100 to 200 bucks. So will that continue? I don't know. It would be interesting if more people graded. I'm not making a plug for that, but if more people submitted and the pop reports got a little bit more fleshed out, maybe we could see how many of these cards are really out there in those conditions.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, what's interesting I've noticed is it's like the majority of I mentioned earlier, the majority of people are either players or binder collectors.
yeah,
And I do appreciate binder collections. I have some for other, games and stuff. But yeah, probably like most things, if the money starts really going up in the grading realm for this, that's going to draw more people in because they'd rather, get that premium for their copy if it's really nice rather than selling it on eBay as raw, you know.
yeah. I don't know. I think this last year has been interesting. I think the some of the overall sales, I don't have any direct evidence for this, of course, but I feel like the TCG group on Facebook has been a little bit slower. I don't know if it's the larger economy that's been a little rougher this year. You know,
Yeah.
supposedly it's getting better, right? But we're not always feeling that. Especially in Washington, we have like the worst gas prices in the country. It's
Oh
it's
yeah.
not going it's not going down here. Our taxes are crazy on gas,
Ugh,
but
we have a new gas
um
tax starting here in Michigan in 2026. Brand new
oh
gas tax.
nice.
It's like, oh man. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Just what we
Uh
need.
yeah, but empirically I feel like the flow of the Facebook group has maybe slowed down a bit, not seeing as much conversation, as many posts and for sales and things like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, I guess we'll have to see, how these graded sales continue to do going into 2026. And I think, you and I, Kyle, we should keep doing this and keep our tabs on here and keep discussing. I think this was a lot of fun today,
Oh yeah,
to look at these. But I think we'll probably wrap it up. I don't want this video to be too long. Nobody's gonna watch it.
fair.
But yeah, this was super fun. Kind of a big long video to recap really the last 7 years. And I think if we start doing this, monthly or quarterly going forward, we can be a little more concise, um, with the data we can present and stuff. Keep track of this, but
Yeah, get more trends, more comparisons. Hey, this same grade sold 2 years ago. Now it's X amount. Yeah, kind of just like
yeah,
a baseline display here today.
for sure.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we can kind of wrap it up here. Um, and yeah, we'll wish everybody a happy new year, and we'll probably be back in a month or maybe next quarter with a new video and some new data to present.
Sounds good. All right, appreciate it. Thanks,
All right.
Zach.
Yeah. Thanks, Kyle.
Yep, see ya.